David?
Rabbi,
Hi. How-
hi. I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine.
Yeah. I love the reading list you gave me. I'm almost finished with the Jewish Catalog 3, and I was
Whoa.
touched by fact by the animals have Shabbat too, except I'm not a good person. I keep forgetting to feed the animals first instead of me first, and I'm trying to remember to say the blessings. I think Shabbat has a an app on the phone which actually will allow you to do the blessings, and I can actually understand it. It's like,
Boy,
wow.
there is. Hi, Carol.
Hi there.
So, yeah, it's actually kind of funny between the washing of the hands and the Hamotzi blessing, the blessing over the bread, we're not supposed to speak. And the but there are you can say things that are related to the meal.
Ah,
So I mean, it's much funnier when you have a much larger crowd,
no.
and everyone is trying to remain silent and waiting to get started. But so it's good morning, Yehudi.
Shalom, Rabbi.
So, but one of the examples they give in terms of what you can interrupt, what you can say, uh, in between the washing and the hamotzi is gvila torah. Feed the ox. So you're supposed to feed your
Yeah.
animals before you feed
Yeah, I found
yourself.
that pretty neat. I might have to get up for a moment. I'm expecting a handyman to come in to do electrical work. My father never taught me electrical work, probably a good thing.
Yeah, a couple times I've wanted to do some stuff, and I thought, oh, I'm going to change the fan in my bedroom. That's going to be easy. It's just a light fan. You just combine some wires, and I thought, I'm just gonna let a professional do it. The electrician came and said, "Yeah, you couldn't have done this yourself." Because they had to move it and they had to go into the roof, and so yeah, there are
Yeah.
reasons why we have professionals.
Yeah, even more embarrassing, an ex-girlfriend tried to teach me how to read an electrical diagram and I couldn't. I'm like, okay, not
Yeah,
going to touch
it's
this.
all right. Everyone has their own strengths. Hello, everyone. Hi, Ricky. Hi, Maddie.
Hi.
I'm back
I
Hi,
was going to say
shalom.
sorry. Sorry, I'm a little late. I had traffic getting in from the living
from
room
the
to the
living room.
bedroom.
Yeah, I'm sure. I
I
know.
see.
Chaim Tovim.
Good to everyone. Good to see you, Rabbi Zucker. Okay, let me start sharing. Oh, wait a minute here. I actually do know how to do this. Okay,
Oh,
so
that's a good one. I like it.
yep.
Ah,
So uh,
Egesh Naphtali.
for covering this story, it's good to know a little bit of the geography.
hmm.
Um, so this is kind of the area where everything will be happening. We'll refer back to this map. I can actually make it larger for the moment, so a little bit more readable. Um, this story from the book of Judges, which is the Haftarah for Parashat Beshalach, takes place in northern Israel, and you can see the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, up there, and right near where there's the battle taking place, just below Zvulun and in the area of the tribe of Issachar, is Har Tabor, the Mount Tabor, which, as you know, we talked about this, I believe, that if you're in northern Israel, you can see it standing out everywhere. Yeah, because we mentioned Har Tabor in last week's Haftarah. And there you can see the movement of the armies. You can follow Sisera's army marches to Mount Tabor. They're coming from Charosha Tagoyim. From here to there, Barak's army, and we'll get to all these people in a moment, from Har Tabor to Kedesh Naphtali. Uh, and then Sisera, the Canaanite general, will be running away, but let's get to the text. And let me also increase the size so it will be somewhat readable. Here we go. Is this what we do? Yes, it is. Okay. And here's Shell.
Ah,
Good.
Very nice.
even I can see it. And my
Oh, good.
vision's
Yeah.
lousy.
Everybody, welcome, welcome. Hi, Shell. So, of course, the Haftarah for Parashat Beshalach comes from Sefer Shoftim, the book of Judges, which follows Sefer Yehoshua and Book of Joshua. We get the sense that the Israelites just sweep into the land and conquer Canaan when they're finally allowed in after the wandering in the desert. And Sefer Shoftim doesn't necessarily share that picture totally, in that we see individual tribes, individual groups of Israelites still struggling against the inhabitants of the land. And there is kind of an editorial framework to the book. Sometimes more detailed, sometimes a little less, but basically, when the Israelites follow God's will, everything's going well. But if they don't, then they are punished, generally by oppression from one of the Canaanite city-states. And Sefer Shoftim has 12 tribes, 12 judges, because there are 12 tribes. And a lot of them are very interesting characters. We've already had Rachav actually in the book of Joshua, who helps out the Israelites. And then in Judges, we've got sometimes we just hear about the judge. We don't really know anything about them, like Shamgar, who's the most recent. We have heard about Ehud, who's a very clever guy, he's left-handed.
Hmm.
And so that allowed him to get close to the king. Eglon kind of describes him. Eglon means like calf or cow, and a very heavy guy. And if you remember the story, Ehud says, "Yeah, I want to tell you a secret, king." And he puts his right arm around him. So who's going to be worried? The right arm that's what does everything. But Ehud is left-handed, so he takes his sword and stabs the king. And it says the king is so fat that the fat covers the sword, rolls over it.
Pardon me.
So there's a lot of graphic stuff, as we'll see in our story. And the introduction to the story, which is not really part of the Haftarah, but it's important to know what's going on, get a sense of the overall framework. So who would like to read here what's in the box? That's, again, not part of the Haftarah itself, but
All
just
right,
comes before it.
I'll be happy to read.
Okay, thank you. Carol?
Okay, but the children of Israel again did what was evil in the eyes of Hashem, and Ehud was dead. So Hashem sold them into the hand of Yavin, king of Canaan, who reigned as king in Chatzor. The commander of his armed forces was Sisera. Now he sat enthroned at Haroshet of the nations. And the children of Israel cried out to Hashem, for he had 900 iron chariots, and he had been oppressing the children of Israel strongly for 20 years.
Yeah, the Hebrew, he's just translating here, Charoshet HaGoyim, just Charoshet of the nations, these are place names. I don't know, Rabbi Zucker, if you wanted to comment on the 900 chariots, because that's going to come back, but what age we're in.
We're in Iron 1,
Yeah,
so that it's questionable whether they would have such, but it's possible.
Why don't we say early Iron One? Iron One wasn't exactly the same time in different places. For example, in Sefer Shmuel Aleph, there's a verse that makes it clear that we did not have iron weapons, only the Philistines did. And
right.
we didn't even have a blacksmith. The only people in Israel who actually had iron weapons at their disposal was Saul and Jonathan. So the point is being made. Now I realize in the Mashara it doesn't say arm, but in the Septuagint does. And there would be no point in making that verse there at the end of chapter 13 of Shmuel Aleph, except to explain why the odds are so much against us at that point.
Yeah, and that's clearly what they're trying to do here, whether they actually had 900 chariots. But the fact is, it's a formidable army. And we have to remember that the Markavot, the chariots, were really the artillery, if you will. Not totally artillery, but they were
Cavalry.
the cavalry. And then you had someone driving the chariot, and the soldier or commander behind him, could toss spears, shoot arrows. So, and they're also moving awfully quickly. And I am sure that the horses on the chariots trampled a number of soldiers, and you can look at movies like Ben-Hur to get the
Yeah, you have to keep in mind that horses were somewhat smaller. It's not really, they were not bred for carrying troops till about from the 9th to the 8th century.
But
All right,
But they could certainly pull light chariots.
and the charioteers are expert archers. So
Yeah.
you have at least 3 people in every chariot. So,
Mhm.
one is a driver, one is an archer, the other one provides protection for the archer. So it definitely is a force multiplier, the way elephants are in the Hanukkah story, and
Right.
the way tanks pretty much won on the Western Front in the First World War.
I was
Yep.
going to suggest the tank analogy.
Yeah, very much so. So now we get to our Haftarah and introduce one of the central characters. Go ahead, Carol.
Now Devorah was a prophet woman, wife of Lapidot, torches. She was judging Israel at that time. She was sitting as judge under the palm of Devorah between Ramah and Bethel in the highlands of Ephraim, and the children of Israel would come up to her for judgment.
Okay, so she's presented. We'll come back to this notion of lapidot torches. That's just what lapidot means, torches.
Yeah.
But she is described, interestingly, as a Neviah, as a prophet. We'll come to that in a moment because she's not the only one described as a prophet. But she is one, when we think of the Shoftim, when we think of the judges, they're not so much judges as they are chieftains. Most of them are military leaders. They're
My
not.
teacher of Tanakh, Stanley Gewurtz, suggested that they were very much like Italian godfathers. You need some problem taken care of. As long as you are loyal to me, I'll take care of it for you.
Not like Trump.
Well, some people say there were Japanese samurai, because basically that doesn't necessarily involve having people killed for nothing at all, which is what usually is what happens with the Godfathers. It involves simply having a muscle for hire without any moral judgment on it.
Yeah.
And certainly Yiftach and Shimshon clearly fit into that kind of picture. But on the other hand, does Shofta in our verse mean Devorah was also of that type? It doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
It sounds like she's the only judge in Sefer Shoftim who actually judges.
Yeah.
The rest of them are what you call saviors, Moshiim in Hebrew.
Yeah. That's clearly, what's so unusual about this is that she's described first as a Neviah, and then she was really sitting. She had her own court. She had her Tomer Devorah. Tomer is palm tree, and it was called Palm of Devorah. And by the way, that becomes a very, very important work in later Jewish ethical writings by one of the great Kabbalists, Moshe Cordovero, who writes his classic work is Tomer Devorah. And so, again, children of Israel would come to her for judgment. Now, remember that the king also served as a judge in the ancient world.
Well, we don't have one yet.
So, it's not unusual that the judge, as they're described here, would be both some kind of military leader and some type of judicial function, but still, what's so unusual is that Devorah seems to be the one shofet, or shofetet in this case, who's really doing the shoftim, who's really judging. Now let's take a look at how some perspectives of our tradition on Devorah. Who is she? So first of all, Malbim, again, in the boxes, it's commentary, not the text of the Haftarah. So, Carol, go on.
It now, Devorah, it is said that there were now gathered 4 preparations for their salvation. 1, what was written above, that they cried out to Hashem.
Yeah,
2,
in other words, the notion that they prayed.
okay. 2, the merit of Devorah, that she merited prophecy, what the previous saviors did not merit,
Like Shamgar and Ehud, they were not known as Nevi'im.
and her natural preparedness as a fiery woman, that her actions were done with urgency and enthusiasm like torches.
It's hard to translate all of this. The Hebrew is Vachanata tiv'it shahita eshet lapidot shahayu ma'aseha bizrizut uvehitlahavut kalapidim. Lahav is like a flame, and it's like someone is inflamed.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm today is hitlahavut. Zrizut is, I translated it here, urgency, but it's like someone who does it,
Right away, quickly.
right away. Yeah, we have a line, mitzvah by haba'al yarcha al tachmitzena. If a mitzvah comes into your hand, don't let it rise. Don't let it turn into chametz. You want to do something as soon as possible. As we probably all know from telling our kids, don't wait, do it now. Even as we think of all the times that we've procrastinated in our lives. Okay, go on, Carol.
3, her effort to correct the people as she would judge them.
Yeah, so what I find very interesting is they outlined 3 things, but he says there are 4 preparations for salvation. I think that she merited prophecy and her natural preparedness were actually meant to be 2. But so
Yeah, I just have a question.
Yeah.
Who picked the judges? Was it the elders, or were they elected by the people? Yeah.
I think it depends on which judge. They go to Gidon to try and get him to do things. Shimshon seems to do whatever the hell he wants.
Gidon is not basically summoned by the people. Yiftach is.
Yiftach, sorry. I meant Yiftach, right.
Gidon is summoned by Hashem. But the bottom line is that the book itself seems to say that all these people were charismatic leaders, including Devorah. Okay? In general, when they're appointed, you'll get a phrase like "Vatitzlach alav ruach Hashem" or something like that line. So it doesn't really
God's
make
spirit rested on the individual.
It's sort of like the Deuteronomic statement about you choose a king, but Asher Yivcha Hashem Elohecha Bo. In other words, you can't really choose anybody you want. The choice has to be ratified by Hashem. So when this person is chosen by the people, if Hashem approves, then Hashem will make that person into a charismatic leader. And that's, I think, what it means when you talk about, that how are they chosen?
Yeah, and it's also questionable, how unified, and that comes up especially in Shirat Devorah that we'll study on Shabbat in the Song of Deborah. How unified were the tribes? A lot of these judges work in very self-contained areas. They're not necessarily going throughout all of Israel.
Deborah gets more than anyone else. She gets 6 tribes on board. Not one of the other judges gets more than 2.
Right.
So,
and even in the narrative section, it's really 2 tribes, but it's really in Shirat Devorah that she seems to be involving 6. But we get the sense of this. Devorah is an unusual character. She stands out, not just because there's a lot of material on her, but she stands out. And now a little bit on this word lapidot. This is from Rabbi David Kimchi. Go on, Carol.
They said that he is Barak, the son of Avinoam, since Barak, meaning lightning, and lapidot, torches, are close in meaning. But in the Midrash, she is called Eshet Lapidot, in this sense, woman of torches, because she made wicks for the sanctuary.
Yeah, so Radak, or our tradition picks up on the similarity between Lapidot and Barak. Lapidot, torches, barak, lightning, they somehow are connected. And the Midrashic tradition likes to connect uh, male and female characters. So, like,
That's
what do you mean she
interesting.
called Barak ben
Yeah.
Avinoam?
But
Well,
Eshet Lapidot doesn't have to mean the wife of Lapidot. It can mean, as you're, I think, trying to say, that it means a fiery woman. It's
yeah,
just as possible.
yeah. I happen to like Malbim's commentary, but
I
they
mean, spot-wise
recognize
is
that
fine.
it yeah, they recognize that it could mean wife or not. And of course, the cute line in the Midrash, Rashi quotes this, that she's called Eshet Lapidot because she's making the wicks for the sanctuary, for the at that
No, her
time it would have
husband
been
was
the
making
Mishkan.
it.
Uh,
He was
so
doing it. But
uh,
we did this in Diane Sharon's class. Basically, Lapidot never means wicks. So as a practical matter, that's a push. A shove.
yeah,
That's push comes to shove.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a stretch.
Again, I'm bringing in these things. They're not necessarily the midrash. I mean, excuse me, they are the midrash. They're not necessarily the pshat, but they are elements that have taken hold within our tradition. So this interpretation that she made wicks for the sanctuary, that's very common. It's not, they're trying to pick up on this phrase Eshet Lapidot, and it's more stories about stories in the Bible. And then on Sefaria, when I was just looking, I came across this, and I know nothing about this commentary, Tsena Orena, which means go out and look.
That's a Yiddish commentary.
Yiddish
For women. It's
commentary.
the 17th
And
century.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I had never come across it.
Oh, it's
There's
extremely
even
popular.
Art Scroll has a volume in English.
That's right. It really
Well,
sells
if you
out
take a
in
look
Baltimore.
at the footnote, an English translation of a popular 17th century Yiddish work containing sermons on the weekly parasha, Haftarot, and Megillot in the style of folk literature. That's what how Safari describes it. But I brought this in because it's fun. This is a very interesting comment. Again, he's trying to talk about Devorah. Would somebody like to go on?
Let me just add on Saint
Yeah.
Orena.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
This was common for women to study in the Ashkenazi tradition.
Yeah, that would not be
That's why it was written in Yiddish.
written in Yiddish.
And
Yeah, yeah.
Hebrew rabbis, I think.
Yeah.
is that what this song was based on? Tsena, 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 tsena.
No.
No,
The word
it's not
means
based
sang,
on
but
that,
the song
but
has
certainly,
nothing to do with Senorita. In
yeah.
other words, the word means
I know.
go.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's addressed to women.
Go
But
out and look.
it comes from Shir Hashirim. It's a phrase straight out of Shir Hashirim. Okay? Every book in the Middle Ages that was intended for a Jewish audience would have some kind of a title that would be taken from a verse set or two or three other words in the Tanakh. That was just the way it was done. Okay? For hundreds of years, that's the way it was done.
Yeah. And by the way, I would say that our song Tsena took Tsena Habanoturena Chayalim Bemoshava. It's also an Israeli dance, go out, girls, and take a look at the soldiers.
Gorgeous young fellows.
Probably one of the dumbest songs in all of Israeli music. But they probably got it from Shir Hashirim, or from this, not from the other way around. Okay. Somebody want to go on because there's a longer section here?
I can, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you, Ricky.
Devorah, the Tzena, Devorah, the wife
Yeah,
of Lapidot,
right here. Deborah, the wife of Lapidot.
was a prophetess, and she judged Israel at that time. A woman whose name was Devorah was a prophetess. Her husband's name was Lapidot. He was the same as Barak, son of Abinoam. The meaning of Lapidot is fire and torch. Barak means lightning and fire. Our sages say that Deborah made wicks for the lights in the temple, and that is why she was called Lapidot. This means fire and torch. That is to say, she caused the light to burn in the temple. From this we learn that it is a mitzvah to contribute to the lighting of the synagogue were to make wicks for the synagogue. Every synagogue is compared to the temple, and Deborah was a judge and sat over all Israel to judge, like a judge of Israel.
Okay, so you can see that Saint Irena is clearly drawing on the tradition of Mefarshim, but you also can tell that it's not just an explanation, but a sermon, which is still, and of course, uh, Devorah could not have been making wicks for the lights in the temple because this was
Yeah,
long before the temple.
but in Shiloh.
Right, in Shiloh, right. However, it's still very, very important um, to contribute to the lighting in the synagogue. You know, we got to pay our electric bill. We need to buy Shabbat candles and Havdalah candles. So I agree with him on that point. You know, it's still an important thing to contribute to. Okay, go on.
The Haftarah tells us that we should not hold women in low esteem, and women themselves should not be despondent. King Solomon of blessed memory held women in low esteem and wrote many bad things about them because he had many wives. Though King Solomon wrote many bad things about women, yet he never threw away any of them. Oh, thank you. He had 1,000 wives. However, this Haftarah shows many good things about women.
Yeah, so that's when, you know, I think doesn't need a lot of commentary.
Well, I think that must be alluding to the line in Kohelet.
Yeah, share it.
I apologize, I forget it, but basically,
No, he says, Adam be'elef matzati v'isha b'chol ele lo matzati. That's your line from Kohelet. In Shir Hashirim, we have talking about they count as concubines and they count as wives, and if you add it all up, it comes over 1,000.
Yeah.
But
So
look, you know, it's not completely impossible from a Tanakh's point of view, because keep in mind how long it takes Achashverosh to pick a new queen. He
right.
tries out a different woman every night for 4 years, okay, until our girl Esther wins the contest, and basically that means Achashverosh must have had a very tough life.
Oh, yeah. So, also very interesting here. It tells us we should not hold women in low esteem, and women themselves should not be despondent. I think it's rather crucial to recognize that the story of the story of Devorah is very much a woman's story. They're the heroes of the story, not to minimize Barak, not to minimize the large role of Sisera, but as we see, it's the story is really about women. I hesitate to call it a feminist text because feminism is a modern concept. It's not what the Bible, they didn't think in those terms. But the fact is, it's very much a woman-centered story, not unlike the beginning of Sefer Shemot that we read just a few weeks ago, when it's the midwives who save the Israelite children, then it's Moshe's mother that hides him, then it's Miriam who watches over him, then it's Bat Paro, Pharaoh's daughter, who rescues him. So, you know, it's very much the women control everything in that beginning.
and even Sipporah saves Moshe.
Right. Sipporah will save
You can
Moshe.
call the story of Barak's sandwich, meaning the 2 slices of bread are Devorah and Yael, and Barak is the peanut butter and jelly. You know, in other words, the bookends of the story of Devorah at the beginning and Yael at the end. And at no point in the story is it ever clear that Barak is doing anything other than summoning troops to battle and actually doing some fighting. But the leadership and the way the story turns out is, I mean, the point is made beferish.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that because we
so
haven't even
I'm
gotten
a
there yet.
question that's the point.
Mhm. Okay, keep going, Ricky.
Rabbeinu Baya in Parshat Bishalach writes that one should not be surprised that a woman should be a prophetess, as Miriam was, and prophesied to her mother that she would have a son who would deliver Israel from the Egyptian exile.
And we can remember also, by the way, in the Haggadah, that she complains about her father's decree. Miriam complains. So, Miriam, of course, and then in this week's parasha, we're going to have the song at the sea, also sung by which he's going to mention in a moment. So there's a whole midrashic history of Miriam as a prophetess. Go on.
This is Moses who will be born. We find the same concerning Sarah. She was much more elevated and important in prophecy than Abraham. As the verse says, whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says. Miriam recited the song at the sea separately from Moses, and all the righteous women sang with Miriam. So too, Abigail was a prophetess and also Hannah. The Talmud in Tractate Pekila says that 7 women were prophetesses: Sarah, Miriam, Hannah, Deborah, Huldah, Abigail, and Esther.
Yeah. So there, the rabbinic tradition didn't have any problem of looking at these characters in Tanakh and saying, some of them are absolutely described as a prophetess, like Huldah and Devorah, but they're willing to ascribe prophecy to these other characters as well.
There's also a woman who's a false prophet. That's the Chidon question. Okay. Who was the woman who's labeled as a prophet and who basically is clearly being rejected? And the answer is no. Adja Hanaviah, who tries to talk Nehemiah into having a meeting at a place and time not of his choosing. And Nehemiah says, don't worry, Hashem gave me the wisdom to see through what that really was, that she's in Sanballat's fire. But that's a very, if you want to have Torah teasers, that's a great one.
Yeah. Okay, go on. Here he goes a little bit off, I think, but that's all right.
This Haftarah was chosen as equivalent to the song that Moshe recited at the sea. This teaches us that Deborah was as important with her song as Moshe. In the past, there was a decree that people were not allowed to keep the Torah that Moses had written. It was also not allowed to read the Torah scroll on Shabbat, since the reading of the Torah of Moshe had been forbidden. Our sages taught that the Torah should not be forgotten, and they searched in the 24 books of the Bible where something was found that was comparable to each Torah portion, so that this should be read in all synagogues instead of the Torah portion.
Yeah, so this was a common understanding of how did it come about that we would read a passage, a Haftarah passage that comes from Nevi'im, as opposed to the Torah portion. Most scholars do not see this as being true in any way, but that was an idea. Go on.
The sages caused that the story of Deborah and her song should be read instead of the song of Moshe. This shows us that Deborah was as important as Moshe.
Yeah. So he's, it's, here's someone, very interesting, recognizing the feminist character, I will say. I will not, of this narrative, that it's very much emphasizing women. And in fact, there are a lot of clues that some of this material was revered as much as anything the men may have done. Okay, now let's finally get back to our Haftarah. Who would like to continue? This is they were talking about Devorah, so we're continuing with Devorah.
I'll read.
Okay, thank you, Maddie.
She sent and called for Barak, lightning son of Avinoam, from Kedesh in Naphtali. And she said to him, has not Hashem, the God of Israel, charged you? Go deploy at Mount Tabor and take with you 10,000 men from the children of Naphtali and from the children of Zebulun. I will deploy against you at Wadi Kishon, Sisera, the commander of Yavin's forces, along with his chariotry and his throng, and I will give him into your hand. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go, but if you do not go with me, I will not go. She said, I will go. Yes, go with you, but it will not be your glory on the way that you are going. Rather, it is into the hand of a woman that Hashem will sell Sisera.
Yeah, and from what she's saying here, who do we expect that woman to be?
Yeah,
Torah.
no,
Torah, but it's not.
Right.
No,
We don't know
not
about
yet.
Yael yet. So, there's an assumption that it'll likely be Devorah because it then says, go on, Maddie.
And Devorah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. So Barak called up Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and behind him came up 10,000 men, while Devorah came up with them.
Yeah, so, Devorah seems to be the essential one. And again, as Yehudi said, you've got Barak being sandwiched, even though he's the general and he's going to lead the army, he's not, um, she tells him, go up, assemble the army, go fight against Sisera. He says, I will, only if you come with me.
Some of these
It's like,
verbs could have a better English translation. The first one, when called, that should have been summoned, because that's
right.
what Devorah is doing. She's summoning Barak. And this word, vayazek, which is used twice, that means muster.
Right.
Muster the troops.
That's right. The first one is Vatikra, but then you're right. Umashachta bar tavor v'lakachta imcha aseret alafim ish. Mashachta elachta. Really, limshoch is to pull in modern Hebrew, but it's like draw them. But
You also have to remember that these are
Azek Barak.
these most likely are young men, and that's even men is even stretching it. Armies were not professional soldiers at this point, and the commander of the army probably wasn't all that old himself, but he may wanted, somebody like his mother's generation to be holding his hand.
Could very well
That's
be.
cute, Rabbi Zucker. But you could say it's something like Washington and the militia fighting the British. Washington himself was a man of mature age. But you're right, the volunteers
Because
are far younger.
think about what happens at the end in chapter 5. Sisera's mother is waiting for him,
Yeah,
not his
Will.
wife.
Mhm.
And what are they? What is she expecting him to do? He's collecting rikma, bright colored cloth, etc. This is stuff
According to Diane Sharon, he's not collecting that. That's simply a symbol for what he really is collecting.
Yeah, we'll come. Actually, we're going to talk about this on Shabbat, but it's true. I mean, there are differences between the narrative, the prose narrative, and the poem, and we will certainly talk about those. But good point about the soldiers being kids to some extent. One, they didn't live all that long to begin with, so a mature man may not even be that old, and and not just the Revolutionary Army, but think today. When you talk about the soldiers in the Israeli army, you think of the captains, you think of some of the officers. They're young kids. They're still in the some
what
of them
I'm
are
suggesting again on Gewurz's observations, that we're talking about the vast majority of the armies are preteens. It's not until you get to the Assyrian army that you get really professionals.
And that will come up as we take a look at the Yael. So now we have a little side note. Keep going, Maddie.
Now, Hever or Hever?
Hever.
Hever, the Kenites, had parted from the Kenites, from the children of Hovav, Moshe's father-in-law. He had spread his tent as far as the oak of Sananim, which is near Kadesh.
Yeah, let me just once again call up our map. You don't need to see the winter weather advisory. You already know that. There's Kadesh, and here's Chatzor, where King Yavin is. Kadesh Naphtali. Interesting, they don't have. Oh yeah, here it's Sa'ananim. This may be the site. Here in Zvulun, not just a little bit north of Har Tavor.
But there's a big star there that makes it look like that's the site of the battle.
Yeah.
but that's not really the side of the battle.
No,
The battle is in Nachal Kishon. I
right,
don't even think the Kishon extends as far as Har Tavor. It's a what do you call it? A tributary.
right.
There's another word, runoff.
Runoff, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure that this is the best map. It's a nice size and that you can see these things and you can see that there are different tribes. Um, and you get a sense of the overall area, but you can Google Barak's battle with Cicero, and you'll get a number of maps that pop up, or map of the battle. So, let's, or as we say, we like to check with Rav Google. Um,
Touche.
yeah. So, now, of course, we have just if we're going to take a little sidelight here, and we talk about Chovav, Moshe's father-in-law. There are people going, wait a minute, was Chovav Moshe's father-in-law? And it turns out this character of Yitro, who we always think of, Jethro, as Moshe's father-in-law, was a man of many identities. Perhaps he was not just a Kohen Midian. He may have also worked for the British Secret Service. I don't know. But he had different, and so first of all, we can just take a look at what Rashi writes about him. This is back in Shmot. This is Rashi's commentary. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but we should just be aware of this, well-known issue in the Bible. Keep going, Maddie.
He was called by 7 names: Reuel,
Reuel,
Jether.
or
I've seen
Yeter.
that, I've seen it written that way sometimes, and I thought it was a typo.
Nope.
But I thought they left off the Jethro, or Hobab, Heber, Kenny, and Putiel. He was called Jether
Or
because
Yeter.
yeah,
The
because
J in Hebrew, it's like, when you see it, when my
Yeter.
colleagues from South America, write things in transliteration and they use a J. It's generally an H.
He was called
Or
Hether
Y.
because he added a section to the Torah.
Yeah, that's the instructions he gave to Moshe about.
Moreover, thou shalt provide. Yet
That's
Jethro,
just a quote of the section that comes after this. Go on.
Jethro, so he was called because when he became a proselyte, he fulfilled the mitzvot. A letter was added to his name.
Yeah, so
Hobab,
when we add letters to names, it's a very positive thing. We have Sarai and Avram, who become Avraham and Sarah. We have subtle changes. Even Hoshea bin Nun is called by his teacher Moshe Yehoshua. Pardon me.
okay,
Okay.
Hobab because he loved the Torah.
Yeah, according to tradition, Yitro became a Ger Tzedek, a righteous proselyte. They don't go into all the names here. I didn't look back because I felt it would take us too far afield. It's in the tractate of Megillah that they talk about the different names. But let's go on with Rashi's commentary here.
Where are we?
Bob is certainly identical.
Hobab is certainly identical with Jethro, as it is said, of the sons of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses.
Yeah, that's our
But-
of Torah.
But as to Reuel, there are some who say Reuel was Hobab's or Jethro's father. Then what, according to this view, would be the meaning of, and they came to Reuel, their father.
That's the daughters. When they return quickly from drawing the water, because Moshe had helped them.
And children call their grandfather father.
Which, in some, families they still do. So,
Sure, they call their great grandfather grandpa. That I can tell you, they can't distinguish between one or the other.
right. So, for example, Alyssa Angle, who sadly just lost her mother. Um, it started when her oldest, when Becca heard Alyssa calling her grandmother mom. That stuck. They all called her mom. And my and Allison's grandfather uh, was called Daddy Dick. No, sorry, that's his son, his Daddy Dick. But they called his Daddy Dick's father Daddy B. So that still happens.
I had friends who the kids called their father Abba. And so their cousins, who always heard their cousins calling their father Abba, used to call him Uncle Abba.
I'm
That's
telling you, Rabbi Poppy, I come out of your class laughing so hard my sides split.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was
it
really
was
good.
a similar story is I was helping out in Noah's classroom in first grade. And the teacher said, "And who is our special guest today?" Because a lot of them belonged to my synagogue, and they were at our home all the time because they were playing with Noah. And so they said, "Abba." And the teacher said, "No, that's what Noah calls him." So yeah. So now we come to the end of Sisera, which is really quite remarkable. Who would like to go on? Any other volunteers?
Read again. Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
And Sisera was told that Barak, son of Avinoam, had come up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera summoned all his chariotry, 900 iron chariots,
Yeah, that comes again. They want to emphasize the power of this army.
and all the fighting people who were with him, from Charoshet of the nations to Wadi Kishon. Devorah said to Barak, "Arise, for this is the day that Hashem is giving Sisera into your hand. Does not God go out to war before you?" So Barak came down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men behind him. And Hashem panicked Sisera and all the chariotry and all the camp with the mouth of the sword before Barak. And Sisera got down from the chariot and fled on foot. Now Barak was pursuing after the chariotry and after the camp, as far as Charoshet of the nations, while all the camp of Sisera fell by the mouth of the sword. Not even one was left.
So this language, which is not necessarily all that different from other descriptions of war in the Bible, but it should be echoing particularly for us as we read Parashat Beshalach, because in fact, we see this same language in Parashat Beshalach, because where we also have, and why this passage was chosen as the Haftarah, we have a prose narrative and then the poem. So, Carol, go on here. Footnote 2.
Now it was the daybreak watch that Hashem looked out against the camp of Egypt in the column of fire and cloud, and he panicked the camp of Egypt.
Same word, Vayahom et Machane Mitzrayim. He panicked the camp of Egypt, and going on.
The waters returned. They covered the chariots and the riders of all of Pharaoh's army that had come after them into the sea. Not even one of them remained.
Yeah, Lo Nishar Behem Ad Echad. And we have up here, not even one was left. The Hebrew, Lo Nishar Ad Echad. Very, very similar. Now, it should also be mentioned for those who are aficionados of the movie The Ten Commandments. If anybody remembers, after the Egyptians are drowned, what happens to Paro?
He's still alive, isn't he?
He's still alive.
Yeah.
So the way they translate, the Midrash translated, Lo nishar behem eid echad. Only left to them was one witness. So according to the Midrash, the one witness is Paro. He watches his army destroyed, and that's picked up in the movie. So just a little bit of there's a lot of midrash in that movie. Really, it's
Mhm.
and also Fishbane points out a number of other things that are parallel between the parasha and the story, but also in the poetic version of the story that we'll study on Shabbat. In the poem, the Kishon River sweeps away Sisera's forces just as Yam Suf drowns Pharaoh's army. So, there are a lot of similarities, and I think they were clear from the beginning. Okay, go on here. Carol, now
Now,
Sisera.
okay, now Sisera had fled on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Chiver the Kenite, for there was peace between Yavin, king of Chatzor, and the house of Chiver the Kenite. Yael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Do turn aside, my lord, do turn aside to me. Do not be afraid." So he turned aside to her to the tent, and she covered him with a blanket. He said to her, "Now let me drink a little water, for I am thirsty." She opened a skin of milk, gave him drink, and covered him. Then he said to her, "Stand at the entrance to the tent, and let it be. If anyone comes and asks you and says, 'Is there anyone here?' you are to say, 'Nobody.'" Then Yael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and put a hammer in her hand and came to him silently and thrust the peg into his temple so that it went down into the ground. Now he had been sound asleep, for he was weary, and he died.
Yeah. So, a little gruesome, but let's just think about this. How is Yael being presented? What does she do for Sisera?
She, I don't want to say seduces him, but
Leads them on.
she leads him on. Yeah, good.
Possibly, although, and that is definitely there. He enters into her tent, and
But not sexually. She leads
No,
him
no,
on.
right.
Yeah.
well, yeah. But the fact is that a lot of the commentaries pick up on the possible sexual connection, and some of them emphasize the fact that they didn't have any contact, which is certainly the pshat. But then there are other commentaries that said, "Oh, yes, they did,
That's
up
based
to
on the
7
Shira, Rabbi
times."
Papi.
Pardon
In
me?
the Shira, you have Bain Ragleha Karana Fa.
We'll get to that one.
That's where that midrash is coming from, not from chapter 4.
No,
It
no,
was
it's not.
the whole bit with the sexual side comes from that one verse in chapter 5. There's nothing in 4 to support it.
Right. Correct. But of course, our rabbis take a look at this whole section. Um, but what else? And I think even for that line, it's not just sexual, because how is she described? What is she doing for him? How is she treating him? And think
Like a
about,
welcome guest. Like
pardon me,
she's
like a
like a,
guest?
yeah. I mean,
She's
But,
giving
but
some.
she's also covering him. She's like a mother to him.
Exactly. She covers him with a blanket. She gives him milk.
Oh,
And
excellent.
and
Very good.
also think about what you were saying before, that these fighters are kids, that maybe Barak needed an older person. Well, here this woman takes him in like, "Oh, please come in. I'm gonna put a blanket on you. Can, give you some milk." And of course, milk also can make you sleepy, make him nice and warm and sleepy. That sets him up. But even picking up a little bit in this mother imagery, a look at Sena Arena down at the bottom here, Carol.
okay. And he said to her, Sisera said to Yael, "Give me a little water to drink, as I am very thirsty." She opened a small jug with milk in it. She gave him the milk to drink, and she covered him. A midrash writes that Yael fed Sisera with her breast milk.
Yeah, so you want to get
Ew.
the notion of her as a mother? Wow.
I
Mhm.
wonder if John Steinbeck knew that, because that's how he ends Grapes of Wrath.
Hmm.
The Okie, starving Okie, ends up in a place where there's nothing at all to eat whatsoever, and it looks like he's going to starve. And then a woman offers him her breast, a lactating woman, and with that, the book ends. That book got the Nobel Prize for Literature, and it's very interesting to think. Rabbi Zuckerman pointed out his sister's mother, the real mother. You know what you said, Rabbi Papi, about chapter 1 and 2 of Shemot? Mother image is all over the place there.
Yep.
That again doesn't mean Paro is, to extend what you said, Rabbi Zucker. Maybe Paro is not a mature woman. Maybe she's, Miriam's age or not much older.
Yeah, she could very because they have to get a woman to suckle the child, and
Well,
Miriam
princesses
calls
wouldn't
the
do
real
that
mother.
even if they were. But what I'm saying is that it never even crossed my mind that Rabbi Paro might be more of a girl
That's
than
true.
a grown woman.
And by the way, coming back to the line that appears, and again, we'll talk about this on Shabbat, that uh, Bein Ragleha, he fell between her legs. That can be sexual, but also, what also comes out Bein Ragleha?
Babies,
Baby,
Uvashuyata,
yeah.
Ayotse, Mivain Ragleha.
Yeah, so, I think that the mother imagery and combined with, we'll see the look at Sisera's actual mother is just so strong here and also makes
It's
it,
reeking. It's reeking of it.
yeah, it's reeking and it's also making it really gruesome. Here she treats him in a motherly way only to smash his skull.
Well, that's
And
because,
Radak,
in a modern version, they say she gave him a drink and he drank a little too much and then he got hammered.
yeah.
Well, let's think about the Nod Halav. It wouldn't be fresh milk. It would be like what in Iranian culture, Persian culture, dug, which is somewhat fermented milk,
Oh,
which makes you even sleepier.
I,
It's known for that.
But
yeah,
how
I
do
think
you know
that,
that's what this is?
I think I need that.
yeah, the actually I think that I heard that, David. That's good. The I think I don't remember exactly because I was just leafing through it, but in Yechezkel Kaufman's commentary on Shoftim, I think he talks about how, this and other commentaries about how the Bedouin most certainly knew that milk and covering someone with a blanket, all is going to make someone sleepy. So she's doing this deliberately, and Radak actually clarifies the gruesome death. Keep going, Carol, down here
Um,
at the very bottom.
the peg went through his temple and became stuck in the ground.
Yeah, so if you didn't really catch that, it's there in the text already, but it's a pretty gruesome scene. And
Yeah.
also, the Hebrew is so powerful because it says, um, when talking about, and also it's kind of drawn out, like in the Akedah, and Avraham extended his hand and picked up the knife to slay his son. What took maybe a second is drawn out in the narrative, whereas other things, they go for 3 days and it covers, barely a sentence. But now it's like in a slow motion here too. V'tikach Yael eshet chever et hayated ha'ohel, et yatad ha'ohel, sorry. V'tasem et ha'makevet, it sounds like a hammer, makevet biyadah.
Hey, Yehuda,
Oh,
Maccabi.
V'tavo elav balat, and she comes to him quietly, sneakily. V'titka etayate birakato. V'titka birakato. The sound of the Hebrew is harsh and strong, like she's hammering his. So there are a lot of sound effects in the Bible as
His
well.
temple.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
His temple.
What did I say?
In the temple, yeah.
Oh, in the
And you can have a lot of fun with this. That's where I'm going.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's
No ifs, ifs, and buts about it.
yeah. It's
I
that's
mean,
why.
Cicero must be pretty tired already. You don't get the feeling that somebody needs milk in order to put him off to sleep. He's
Yeah.
probably falling off his feet as it is.
Oh yeah. I mean, the guy's
You
just coming
know?
from a battle and he's been running away on foot. So now we come to the end of the story. Keep going.
Now here Barak was pursuing Sisera, and Yael came out to meet him and said to him, "Come, I will show you the man whom you are seeking." He came to her, and here was Sisera fallen dead with the peg in his temple.
again, just let's not forget, how the guy died. They emphasize this kind of gruesome scene. Also, I think a little bit of Yael's character. She comes out to meet Sisera. She comes out to meet Barak. I think that just shows a little bit, there's a woman very forward, not in a negative sense, but she's a confident, and that's, how she is very much a powerful character, and Yael became a very popular name in Hebrew.
Leah
Not only
did that
because it's
to
beautiful.
Yaakov.
Mhm. So again, just to get
Say
the
Leah Lekratau.
yeah.
There
So
are others, that's
well, that's also yeah. Exactly. So and now just again to get this narrative framework here, just finish up, Carol.
So on that day, God humbled Yavin, king of Canaan, before the children of Israel. And the hand of the children of Israel went harder and harder against Yavin, king of Canaan, until they had completely cut off Yavin, king of Canaan.
Yeah, so until we get to the story of the next judge. Also a little bit of a Devorah tells Barak that she's going to give, that God is going to give Sisera into his hands. Of course, it's not really his hand, it's Yael's hand. And that they emphasize that when it says up here, specifically, she takes it in her hand. So powerful, powerful story. It's the
Yeah.
sound of the Hebrew, the images that are used, really quite remarkable. And we'll see it continues. And some of these things are brought out even more in the poem. And that's what we'll study after services on Shabbat. So Toda Rabbah.
I call your attention to my article on the Song of the Sea as a coronation
Mhm.
thing.
Rabbi Zucker,
Forgot about
put
that
these
one.
articles, at least give us a link we can directly read the article. Okay, not a podcast, a link that opens up.
It's in Bashalach in the Torah.com.
Yeah, you can go
All
to
right,
the Torah.
all right, if that's fine. Okay.
For everyone, you can go to the Torah.com and you can go to the parasha, and under the parasha, they'll give you all of the different commentaries and articles that have been written. So, or I think you can also, I believe you can also search Rabbi Zucker by your name.
Yeah.
On the,
But the easiest, go to the Torah.com, Parashat Bashalach, and there are lots of articles, but come down to you can find my name.
Yeah.
Or stick my name in the Torah.com, and I've got 4 articles. So that's
Right.
actually one of
Toda
my
Rabbah.
Thank
Everybody
you.
stay safe if you have to go outside.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank
That
you.
bad.
Warm.
But,
Drive carefully.
yep.
Everyone be
Shabbat
safe.
shalom.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.